future is now. Topics and music that affect your life from Universal Broadcasting Network. Tune in at ubnradio.com.
Hey, and greetings and salutations, everyone. This is Walt Lusk, your host, once again for Dr. Judy WTF. And for those of you that haven't been tuning in for long, what the heck does WTF stand for? Well, this is a psychology show, so it's What the Freud. And in studio we have, as usual, Dr. Judy Rosenberg, the actual owner of Dr. Judy WTF. And stay tuned. We are going to shrink an amazing song. In fact, the song is so amazing that the composer of the song scared him to death after he wrote it and performed it. And yeah, it's a true story.
Is it really?
Absolutely,
I want
it
to know more
is.
about that. You
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You have the facts.
It's actually by personal request. It's one of my favorite songs.
Wonderful.
It's a tough song. We talk here on this show. We talk about, and of course, it's a call-in show. So if you want to get on the couch, Dr. Judy, we're going to talk about something related but a little different, which is long overdue and by several folks that requested it. The basis of a lot we talk about is attachment theory. And we always talk about moms, even though we talk about the double dungeon, which is a relationship between mom and dad. But we're going to talk about dads today.
For a change.
And how important dads are, since IRB one. And whatnot. But I thought I would start the show. I admit to reading other stuff. This is a Success magazine. It's actually got Jimmy Kimmel on the front of it. But there was a little interview they did, and it was here. Sean Anker is an early positive psychology adapter out of Harvard University and the author of The Happiness Advantage. And he sums up what we've learned about personal happiness over the past decade and a half. We are not our genes. We are not our environments, nor are we our childhoods. At least we don't have to be. By changing our habits, we can trump even our genes. And in my view, and we can all look at half full, we can all be half full people if we choose to be and want to be. And in my view, that's encapsulated what Dr. Judy does with her 9-panel mind map system, is basically rewriting the genes and rewriting where we were as opposed to where we want to be.
So starting with at the beginning, because we're going to get into attachment theory from the point of view of the importance of fathers, because we do talk so much about mothers. But if any of you noticed, our theme song is from The Matrix, and it's called Club to Death. And ironically, unconsciously, Walt chose the song, and I think it's absolutely appropriate because all parents, bar none, in bigger ways, smaller ways, and if you're lucky, in very small ways, as parents, we all injure our children in some way. It's impossible to be perfect because even the fact of injury is something that if it's a small injury, then the child needs to then have over time the ability to sustain it because the world is injurious. So ultimately,
I think the world is really quite injurious.
Injurious.
And the other byline of the show is healing human disconnect. And reading another article in there, and basically, again, this is from sort of a business, motivational, successful perspective, has nothing to do with what Judy's doing. And the bottom line was, one of the speakers said, "Hey, we all have this burning need and desire to connect."
Yeah, and the system.
And that's exactly what we do.
Yes, and the system that I came up with is a system to connect, and it starts with looking at our childhood wounds and the reactions to them. And Walt, if you have a moment, just to put the panels up.
Those of you who are listening to this on podcast, and you can pull it up on Stitcher or iTunes, or of course ubnradio.com, which is Universal Broadcasting. You can go to www.drjudywtf.com and see the mind map panel. And we just finished, actually, just to let you know, those of you who haven't turned in for long, we just finished a 9+ part series on the complete mind map. We spent one episode at least on each of the 9 panels. So, and we want to say this. Next week, is it next week?
Yeah,
next week. Stay tuned, because we are going to have an amazing opportunity, actually probably for the next 2-3 weeks, to see and feel and hear and experience Dr. Judy live with a patient. We have found a lady who wants to be on air with Dr. Judy and go through the whole mind map process. And we're probably going to try and do it in 3 sessions.
Yes.
So we're going to see Dr. Judy on air with an individual, and it's going to be an amazing, amazing event. We're going to do the first week, of course, of the panel, which Judy's going to talk about, is from through to,
And who done it?
and who done it, and where's Waldo? And so the first week we're going to try and concentrate on the from and get kind of the basis and the foundation and what Judy calls the core belief. Then the through, and then of course the paradigm shift and the to.
So yeah, just to catch you up on what the mind map is all about, it is a matrix. It's a matrix of information, and it's a matrix of a system designed to take people from the problem, which is originally the wounds of childhood, which is panel 1, and the reaction to the wound, and then the encoding, which is what gets encoded into the fiber of a person's self-esteem. And what we're going to see in next week really is an exposure of a person's wounds of childhood and the reactions to the wound, and what she, we're going to call her Maria, and what she encoded into the fiber of her being is a negative core belief. And then we are going
Which is something most of us have.
Yeah, we do, unfortunately. And we will see how that core belief actually lands there and why it happens that way. And then the through part is actually the dismantling of the core belief and the breaking open of the defenses and, of course, identifying them and then expressing the pain behind them, which is a big part of my treatment with people, is really to exhume all of the repressed feelings and shine the truth light on it, and then paradigm shift people into interconnection, which is where they're becoming whole and complete, and they're completing on their past, and then shifting them into a place of recoding and recoding the negative core beliefs with something that's more wise and sustaining and ultimately achieving unity. And with that, there's no ideal, okay? So folks out there, don't think that this is something that's airy-fairy ideal. We're going to become these perfectly unified human beings. It is a process, and it is a lifetime process.
It's a journey.
Yes, it's a journey.
I like the word exhume. That's really a good word, I think, for what you do, because obviously, unless we identify our pain, our wound, our core belief, then there's no way we can identify it and actually exhume it and replace it with something that's far more healthy.
Right, and we talk a lot about the damage that our mothers inflict upon us, and we certainly talk a lot about the double dungeon, which is the mother and her relationship to the baby and her level of connection with the baby, and then the father and his level of connection with both the mother and the baby and the system, the family system, which is very, very important. I'm going to elaborate a lot on that tonight. And the idea that that this system is really the holding body for that baby. So if you look at panel 3, for those of you who are live streaming this, you can see a DNA strand representing the mother and the father. And then what happens is if the system breaks down between the parents, then you could see the rungs on the ladder, which is supposed to hold the baby literally in a cradle, okay? Using it as a metaphor right now, and if that doesn't work out,
no, well, we'll talk about more of that later.
Well, there's a lot of chaos for the baby, and that's the way that one crumbles.
Yes.
So just a little bit more on the importance of the father and the way the father relates to the mother.
I wanted to put a little intro if you're going to talk about the father, folks.
Sure.
For those of you that watch television, do you remember this song?
People, let me tell you about my best friend. He's a warm-hearted person who loved me till the end. People, let me tell you about my best friend. He's a one-boy, cuddly toy, my up, my down, my pride and joy. People, let me tell you about him. He's so much fun.
That, folks, was the theme from The Courtship of Eddie's Father with Bill Bixby. It was a great fun show, and So we're talking. I thought that came to mind. I thought I'd throw it in there for little nostalgic sake.
Well, hey, aren't our fathers supposed to be our best friends? And isn't dad supposed to be the best friend of the mother? And what happens when he's not the best friend of the mother? What happens when father doesn't support the mother, who's the nurturer? And I speak a lot about this, that the nurturer has to be nurtured and nourished.
Yes.
Emotionally, financially, there's got to be stability in the family. If there's a new mother and she's nursing her baby and she's supposed to have time to bond with the baby, then who but the father is going to be there to really offer her the support system? And if he doesn't offer her the support system, well, there's the trickle down onto the child. And I deal with a lot of cases where there is parent disconnect, mother-father disconnect.
Wow.
And the pressure on the mother is immense. And the pressure, of course, on the father when he's alienated from seeing his own child is also immense. So this
Yes,
this is a two-pained thing. You know, it's really, really painful from both ends.
And in today's society, I think it's even more painful for moms, because typically, you know, mom is trying to do the maternal instinct and be a mom, but then also she has to be a wife, and chances are she's gone back to work.
Yeah.
So she's pulled many different directions all at the same time.
Right, and we all only offer our mothers a 3-month maternity leave, which is disastrous. And in the case where she is a single mother and she's receiving some semblance of child support from father, oftentimes that's not only not enough, but it's not enough emotionally, because there's not the emotional support now for her to do what she needs to do, which is to be a giver. So if she's not getting from dad, then it's really difficult for her to give. So for those of you who are dads, and particularly for those of you who are in a relationship and your wife just gave birth to a baby, please understand that the best thing you can do is support her. And by supporting her, it'll level off her emotions, and it'll level off her emotions so that she'll be able to mother better. And for those of you who are, for whatever reasons, you're not in the relationship with a woman who is the mother of your child, by all means, it is really important that you support her and let her know what she's doing right, and appreciate her for all of her motherly, instinctual input into the baby, which is the breastfeeding and the picking her up or him up when she cries or he cries, because that Ferber method, which we talked about
Right, yes.
for a long
Well,
time.
the Ferber method, for those, basically, if the baby's crying, it needs to learn how to soothe itself and therefore kind of calm itself down. And the the evidence is overwhelmingly contrary to that belief. You know, a baby early on needs to learn how to self-soothe and doesn't have the ability to learn it. So it just doesn't work.
So many people that still believe this,
I know,
Walt.
it's
They
a lot.
do. You
It's a
know,
lot,
they
I
think that by letting a baby cry it out, that they're really actually making the baby independent. And that's to the contrary, because when you let a baby, a 1-year-old or 1.5-year-old or 2-year-old cry it out, then really what you're doing is you're not soothing the baby. The baby's not learning how to self-soothe, and you're creating a lot of anxiety. And then I see them in the office.
Yeah, well, you know what?
Unfortunately.
When I'm crying, I want to be held.
Yeah, well, me too.
Yeah.
And guess what? If you're a 2-year-old and you don't know how to calm yourself down, you don't even know how to go to the refrigerator and get yourself like a glass of beer or something, you know?
I was going to say, forget the
Now
refrigerator,
what?
man. I'm going to a liquor
You
cabinet.
know, or go out for a run or something, you know,
Exactly.
something healthy, right? So it becomes a real issue in terms of what's ingrained into the fiber of the being of the child. And so what happens here is the father becomes ultimately very important, especially as the child ages. And somebody asked me a question today about how long a parent should breastfeed. And so, of course, I had the good fortune of being at my class at UCLA today. And the answer from some of my colleagues is at least a year. And so I think
I agree.
conservatively...
I mean, I'm no psychologist, but my wife breastfed for longer than that, and the dividends that it paid off are just huge.
Right, and I think a little bit differently than that. And here's my opinion on that: is that if the child is in distress, if the child is in a home that's a single parent home or a stressful home or divorcing situation, then I think that child needs a lot more soothing than the average child. And I think that the mother can feel it instinctively, and we have to go back to our instincts and trust them.
Baby
They're
can feel
good
it too.
ones. Right, and the mother gets activated in her pain when she sees her baby in distress, and then the doctor's saying, don't pick her up, don't breastfeed her, don't do this, and then she goes nuts thinking, what should I do? Follow my instincts or should I follow my doctor's advice? So dads out there, really the most important thing you could do is support the nurturer. And then there are other important things you could do.
Nurture the nurturer.
Yeah, nurture the nurturer. Yes. And I know you have a bunch of information on.
I do. Well, there was an interesting. What kind of prompted this was, aside from some folks said, you're leaving dads out, there's an article that came out a couple weeks ago entitled about roughhousing, and so dads primarily roughhousing not only with boys but of course with girls, and that there's some tremendous benefits to this, and it's. They're trying to qualify it, and it's been kind of interesting to do such because it's just you go and have pillow fights and whatnot. But there's a lot of things here. Roughhousing, rough and tumble play, pillow fights, wrestling, rolling around. The other side of roughhousing is people don't think immensely as tumbling, moves, flits, throws, imaginative games, running up walls. My daughter used to climb up door jams, jumping off roofs, rafting downstairs on the mattress, physical interactive play. And there's advantages to this. And first and foremost, typically moms are a little bit more protective of children than dads are. And I'm a dad, and I will admit that I am guilty as charged, but I learned early on what my my strengths and weaknesses and limits of my daughters were. And dads let kids in more of a sort of a controlled environment take more calculated risks than moms will. And it pays a lot of dividends. There was one story here real quick that I can find. That basically, dad just said, hey, let her fall or let him, in a controlled environment, it's going to pay off. I've got about 10 to 12 things that have advantages of roughhousing. But, fathers who spend time with their kids help instill self-control and social skills, numerous studies have, okay? And it's talking about attachment. But let's see. Dad empower kids to take chances. We'll start with this one. So it's called dad power, okay? It's not the moms that never do it. It's the dads that do it more often. Moms tend to develop a more empathetic and emotional relationship with their children, right? Mothers help children feel connected and anticipated and wanted. Fathers teach them how to interact with others, how to control themselves when they feel the need or needs aren't being met. Again, we talk about the double dungeon, or the inner world is basically a relationship with your mother, right? Being connected, emotional relationship and such. And your father is the outer world. And that, in many instances, people are discounting it and not putting enough credence into it. So the first thing is, roughhousing specifically makes kids smart. And it turns out that it fertilizes the brain, okay, because it creates and releases a chemical called BDNF.
Okay.
You familiar with BDNF?
I'm
a
not.
brain-derived neurotropic factor, okay, which really is like fertilizer for the brain. It basically helps memory. So, figure this all out. Secondly, it builds emotional intelligence. Skills in reading emotions of others, as well as in managing their own emotions, because they gain self-control and confident behavior. So you're roughhousing, so you learn where the boundaries are. A dad will sometimes make the kid win, or sometimes he'll win, and they learn that not to be afraid of someone that's bigger than them. And of course,
Yes.
Sometimes they win, and sometimes they get hurt, but it's not anything that's too traumatic or terrible.
And this only works when the child has a sense of safety
I was
from
gonna say
the
it's in a
mother.
complete safe environment.
Safe environment.
absolutely.
And again, the inner world is the mother, and she is usually the primary caregiver. And so what you see with children is especially around the age 2-ish era, you see them venturing out more and more. And the more secure the child is in his attachment to the primary caregiver, which is usually the mother, the more adventuresome that
Right.
child is. And the father is supposed to be that safety, fun person that's the outside world, so that when the inside world is a good, solid base, then they want to take those risks and play hard, and then enjoy the victory of having defeated dad, or even just, the fun of having a bigger guy kind of, power over them a little bit.
And I know it's important for self-esteem. And I, as a father, and I have 2 daughters, and they're in their 20s now. Both of them, I worked my buns off in making sure they had self-esteem. Because my belief is that if a child, and pretty much more girls than guys, but any child has self-esteem, then it's going to pay, again, gigantic dividends in the future. What choices they make and who guys they date, what jobs they may take, how they present themselves in that job, how they're going to treat themselves in school, how they interact with people. If someone's giving them drugs or something, they're going to have a little more self-esteem and not really need that acceptance of maybe going down that road. And I can't tell you, one daughter was a model. To me, I've stood in front of a camera before, and for me, it's pretty bloody intimidating, even though I'm sitting here in front of a camera and on radio in front of thousands of people. But, it's gratifying to watch and know. And I've dated women because I'm divorced, and these women don't have self-esteem at all, and it's just aggravating. And it's kind of hard to even have a relationship with a woman who's got that or doesn't have it.
And if the blueprint, remember, we're talking about the blueprint, and now we're talking about the parental blueprint. So not only do people have core values within themselves, but then there's a negative core value within a relationship sometimes, and I'll find that to be so, especially with couples who have very, very poor skills, very poor communication skills, have had a lot of trauma and drama in their own history of upbringing. And then what you'll find is that the discord gets displaced on the child, and if the mother and the father are not really holding a healthy position between themselves, then this falls on the child. And then you'll see, I've actually had patients in my practice who will say, when I was 3 years old, I used to stand in between my parents, and I used to push them aside to make sure that they didn't fight anymore, and I used to try to get in between them so that they wouldn't hurt each other. And unfortunately, this is where the parentified child begins.
I was going to say, who's the parent in that situation?
Who's the parent, right? So fathers, right? Fathers, be healthy. Do everything that you can so that you are at your optimal health emotionally, so that you can transfer this health into your children and
Absolutely.
have a better blueprint for the next generation.
One of my personal definitions of children I learned a long time ago is God's little spies. Mm-hmm. They are more aware and more in tuned and pick up stuff way more than you think. And it could be just a look or something else. It's like, because they're watching. They're watching and absorbing. And they're giant sponges, everything.
And not only that, Walt, but they copy what you do, not what you say. So you may say, for example, you may say, hey, kids, please don't smoke, okay? And then you'll find that if you're a smoker, guess what? Your child is at least twice as likely to pick up a cigarette. So it's not what you say, it's what you're doing that they pay most attention to.
And Dr. Judy should know she's written a book called He Smoked to Quit.
No, that's not the title.
Oh, no?
No, it's okay, but it's part of the title. You're right. You're partly right, because it's about using an e-cigarette if you want to, but the title of the book is called Dr. Judy's Habit Breakers Stop Smoking Plan. And it's a really, really very concise book for those of you who are smokers and for those of you who are parents and you want to make sure that your child is not going to pick up a cigarette. Well, then the best thing that you can do is to quit smoking. It is available
on Amazon.
Yes.
It sure is.
Yes.
Yeah, just Google go to Amazon and Dr. Judy Rosenberg and you'll find the book. And there's what's interesting about the book is there's 2 methods. It's either cold turkey or gradual. So whatever method you're more comfortable with, that's the one you do.
And so, again, monkey see, monkey do, whether it's smoking or drinking or anything. If you're a couch potato and you don't have a lifestyle of getting up and going hiking and doing physical activities, well, guess what? Your children may copy you. Now, I know peers have a great influence on children as well, but the primary influencers, obviously, are mom and dad. Mom and dad. Right.
Yeah, and so getting back to roughhousing also makes kids more likable, and there's 4 advantages. One, it helps build friendships, because, I mean, if you're roughhousing with somebody else, you kind of maybe become their friend. Secondly, it helps them distinguish between innocent play and aggressive play. Therefore, it helps children develop social and problem-solving skills. Third, it learns them how to take turns. Sometimes dad will win, and sometimes the kid will win. So therefore, there's a yin and a yang and a balance. And lastly, again, and the concept of leadership and negotiation.
So we're talking about boundaries.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And we're talking about role modeling power.
Yes.
After the father. And so imagine having a great dad that can roughhouse with you, a great dad that's nurturing mom at the time, especially the first few years of life. Imagine having a father that is your best friend that you can confide in and play with. That's such a huge piece of this, is actually being able to play, because that's what develops the emotional intelligence, is that play.
And you know what? If you're listening and you had a great experience with roughhousing with dad, pick up the phone, call us. We're live right now. Area code 323-843-2826 is our telephone number. We'll put you on air and on the couch of Dr. Judy. 323-843-2826. And you are listening to Dr. Judy WTF. And, of course, the WTF is What the Freud.
A little history on that.
Yeah.
What the Freud is chosen because, first of all, I think Freud had a huge and ingenious contribution to the field of psychology, which is that he identified that we repeat things. The Freudian repetition principle. We repeat things because we ultimately want that broken record to stop. And the only way that we can stop the broken record is to go back to the cause of the problem and identify the cause and clean out the wounds from the past. So as it relates to the father, a lot of our patients that I'm seeing are not only wounded by the mother, they're wounded by the father. And unfortunately, I see a lot of patients who've been beaten. I mean, this is the way other end of the spectrum.
Well, that's abuse big time.
Sexually abused,
yeah.
okay? And so they're now in an environment of unsafety. And then the most horrific act, I should say, non-act, is ignoring your child. Ignoring. We often forget that ignoring is an injury. There are acts of omission, there are acts of commission. And when you omit, when you forget to hug your child, when you forget to have that play and that eye contact, that's just as damaging, if not more, because children respond to humanity, human touch. We are all wired to connect. We're wired for love. And if we don't have that love, and particularly when we don't have, I want to talk a little bit about the love of a mother and a father and the system, and how healthy it is for the child to feel that the mother and the father are actually on the same page. So one of the mistakes people make, and I'm sure I've made this myself, is to argue in front of my children with my spouse. Okay? Worst thing you can do, because if you have something to say to your spouse, then say it privately. And make sure that what the children are seeing is a really strong front. So if there are any disagreements to be worked out, then do it when the children are not around, and then hold a united front, because that's what the children want to see. They want to feel the presence of the king and the queen, and they want the dynamics of this really, it's kind of like a very solid structure that they could look up to, and then as they look up to it, they could then relax and feel safe, and also feel that the partners that are really in charge of their lives are nourishing each other, communicating with each other, providing each other with safety, and that is a really big key to mental health. And we don't have that as much in our society anymore. I think there's 50% divorce rate now in our country.
Yeah, it's about 50%.
About 50%,
Yeah,
right.
it's pretty high.
Yeah.
And then, of course, if you remarry, then the odds are higher that you're going to get divorced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's also proven that kids that come from a divorced family have a greater chance of becoming divorced as well.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah,
It's back to the blueprint, isn't
It's
it?
the ripple effect,
Right.
you know. Yeah. So another advantage of roughhousing is it makes kids ethical and moral. Someone, to model how someone's bigger and stronger holds back, we teach them self-control, fairness, and empathy. We let them win, which gives them confidence and demonstrates that winning isn't everything.
It isn't?
No, looking out for number one isn't everything too. Roughhousing also keeps kids physically fit. It's pretty straightforward, right? They learn complex motor skills, motor learning, concentration, coordination, body control, cardiovascular fitness, and flexibility. And another one is it brings joy. Because when they play, it circuits the brain, it activates the endorphins that feels joy. And that's why, hey, man, I really have fun roughhousing with Dad.
And a big factor today is time and cell phones and all these aspects that we talk about called the human disconnecting factors. Computers, cell phones, watching television, having relationship with your things rather than with your people. And please, for those of you who are listening and who do have children, really consider the importance of time spent with your children. There's no better way to convey unconditional love, which is the most powerful human
I was going
force
to mention
on
that
the
earlier.
planet. There's no better way than your time, your undivided attention.
Because you know how children really do spell love? They spell it T-I-M-E.
I love that, Walt.
Yeah.
It's so true.
Yeah. Children they spell love differently, remember. It's T-I-M-E.
And when we talk about that concept of time, I'm also going to add to this admixture, okay? Eye contact, skin contact, attunement, listening to them. I was reading an article about narcissism, and we're going to do more on that.
Oh my gosh.
a lot more on that topic.
Dr. Judy stumbled upon an article, which is a preview of coming attractions. We're going to do it after our big therapies. Narcissistic parents, and primarily narcissistic mothers, and we've got 24 things that they do. That is just going to be so loaded.
Right, and I just want to mention one of them, and a lot of people are guilty of this, is that when you're talking, let's say your child is saying something to you like, blah, 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 I had a great day in school, and then the parent says, well, I had a great day too. And, you preempt your child, and it's like, and now what's the child, that your child just gave you a gift of look how special my day was.
And they're letting you into they're letting you into their day. I mean, come on.
Right, and then what do? You trump them with your own story? Not a good idea. Not a way for your child to really feel connected to. So this is just one of the things that I was reading about narcissistic parents, is that they always trump their child's story with their own story.
Yeah, it's always about them.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is, going back, we had Sten Tarkin, who was here for Wired for Love. He said, chatted with him for a little while after the show, couples will chat in the car, because it's quiet and there's no children sometimes, and there's no interruptions and such. He says, but the dynamics physically and physiology of sitting next to each other, but you're not facing each other,
right,
has its own challenges.
And I'm going to refer back to an experiment I do a lot with my children in my practice, is to show them the harmful effects of human disconnect. I will ask them how their day was, what was special about their day, and then on purpose I will pick up my cell phone and just kind of look away from them and then watch their reaction. and they get really, really disoriented quickly. They get immensely
Matter of
frustrated.
seconds.
Yeah, matter of seconds.
Matter of seconds.
Right, and then I'll stop the experiment because I myself can't stand to do it for too long. It just hurts so bad. And I look at their poor little face, and I could see that they're in distress. And then we talk about it, and we talk about the effects of human disconnect. And then they understand that, oh, no wonder I can't think clearly. No wonder I can't do my math problems and my spelling problems. So parents, fathers, what a big gift it is to sit with your child and do homework with your child and answer questions and draw and just do simple things like play on the floor with them, sit down and just, and just be, because we're a bunch of doers, aren't we? And
Yeah,
we're so kind of disconnected just from sitting and being and playing.
Well, gosh, that's one of the advantages of roughhousing with Dad.
Yeah, yes. Thank you. I love that article.
Yeah,
Walt.
another advantage, I think, is one more here. Boosts your kids' resilience. Develop a resilient spirit. One of the best things, because the ability to bounce back from failures and adapt to unpredictable situations.
Right, and isn't it better to have an unpredictable situation with a father than with the stranger?
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep,
and
yep,
then
yep.
they can kind of learn how to snap to it in that safe environment. That's the key.
Well, I see failure more as a challenge to overcome rather than an event that defines them. And the other one, yeah, and that I mean, failure is not final unless you let it be.
Well, you mentioned that winning isn't everything, and so that when you see when there's no connection, winning is everything. Because if you're sitting with a computer, right, and you're playing a game, it's the winning that's the everything. But if you're with a human being and you're laughing and you're relating to them and you're having this amazingly wonderful experience, then it's the experience that's more the everything, isn't it? Rather than the winning or the losing of it.
The winning and losing is an aspect.
Absolutely.
And it's a thing, but it's not the only thing.
Right. So this is a lot of what I treat in my practice. I treat children who feel very disconnected from. A lot of children suffer from what we commonly call ADHD or ADD, and they have an inability to really focus. And the way I see this through the lens of my mind map is that they've been wounded and they've been disconnected from, and they're busy licking their emotional wounds. So for parents that are experiencing children who are acting out and not focusing and not concentrating, it's really, really useful to ask yourselves, what am I doing that's disconnecting from my child? What can I do to connect better? What can I do to engage with my child so that my child can feel contained? A big word for feeling that the parents' emotional arms are around them. Such a huge deal, such a healthy thing for the neurobiology, because now research is finding that all of this is not so much in our cognition, in our logical system, but it's deep, deep down in our emotional system. And the research is showing more and more that the traumas are embedded in the emotional brain, which is known as the amygdala, and no cognitive, no behavioral therapy is really going to absolutely get at this. It's got to be really gotten to through the emotions.
Well, we're emotional creatures.
Right, and that
whether
is
we want to admit it or
latest.
not.
Well, I think
Damn it.
I think we have no choice. We are emotional creatures.
Whether we admit it or not.
Right.
And we've talked a lot about roughhousing, and maybe there's, you just aren't comfortable with it, or you just can't do it. There are other activities that you can do as a dad to hang out. What I thought was fun is, do a project together. How about cooking dinner, right? We all got to eat, right? That's a very simple use of time. Okay, maybe you want to have them pick the menu. Maybe you want to pick the menu and then go shopping with them to go get the ingredients to come home and cook it. And then you can be learning chemistry. You can be doing something together. And I guarantee you'll find some favorite meals. Hey, I remember when, my dad was young, we'd cook blah, 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 right? That's going to give him amazing memories. Or take a hike. or go to the beach if you're near that, or a lake. I like cooking, or go play a game of basketball. Go down the street and go to a basketball court. I used to play tennis, but basketball's better. But try cooking. I mean, it's fun. It's very practical, and learning more than just cooking and chemistry.
And a lot of people talk about quantity time versus quality time, and my take on that is both, really. You can't just have quality time and have like one great experience a month and say, oh, I've had my quality time with my child.
It's like punching a clock. I put in my time.
Ridiculous.
Well, what did I just say? Children spell love how?
Yeah, right.
Time.
So both quality time and the quantity does matter, and the consistency does matter. So
being
time.
consistent and persistent, right? I mean, sometimes the kid's busy doing other things and you're busy doing other things, but you know what? You only have a finite amount of time with them until they're gone, right? And the older we get, the older they get, the more busy they get, the more busy we get. So you really got to make time.
Are you hinting at our song, Walt?
I might be.
You might
We're
be.
getting close to it, but
Yeah.
it's true. It's like we only have it until they're like 18, and then they get the keys to that car. Oh, here's another hint.
Wait, don't they get the keys to the car at age 17?
16.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it 16?
Yeah.
I thought it was driver's permit at 16.
No. You get a permit at 15 and a half here in California, and then they can drive it at 16.
And another point that you touched upon is the idea of letting your children fall and letting them make mistakes, and really allowing for life to train them, because we're not always going to be able to prevent our children from every single injury. And sometimes when we have a safe enough environment and we just allow the child to learn that such and such is a hard surface and a pointy surface, and these floors are slippery, so be more careful. Or if you touch the heater, it's just going to be too hot, right? Of course you don't want to allow I'm not suggesting that you let your children get scalded and burned, and at the same time they're going to have to learn by experimenting. So another wonderful thing you can do is make your environment really, really safe, so that they can touch the walls, and they can spill water, and they can put toys spread it all out, because their minds are really, really interested in experimentation.
Well, they are. I mean, the children really are little scientists. They don't know. They but they don't know. And how did you know what you know? You just experimented. When I was younger, my kids were younger. It's like, you want to check it out, you want to file it, you want to do it. Again, it was a little more sense of adventure and whatnot, but they're not going to know. I mean, two things, and we're going to go to our song. Just a personal story came into mind. We had this project that my daughters had to do, and they were doing it together, and they had to deep fry some crabs or something for something. And my youngest daughter at the time said, well, I want to figure out what happens with ice and with burning oil. And I says, okay. So it got really, really, really late, and I was in the family room right next to the kitchen, and it was literally about 1 or 2 in the morning, and I was there, but I was kind of dozing, and all of a sudden I heard this really loud gurgling sound, and I knew exactly what happened. She had taken an ice cube and popped it in, and it just exploded all over the wall.
Wow.
And I literally had to jump, and they took off. Oh my gosh. And so I had to find the lid and put all that out, and and my daughter thought that I was just going to be absolutely upset. And I was a little hurt. I was upset that she hadn't woken me up and said, hey, I want to do that now. But I teased her. I said, why in the world did you pick the biggest ice cube you could find to pop it in there? Which she didn't. It was just, that was what happened. So, you just got to give your kids a little leeway to experiment. And I did, but.
But it left this amazing memory.
Oh, yeah, it was great. It was an amazing memory. One last one. There's in a story here. There was a father who went hiking with his kids. And in the middle of the hike, dark clouds rolled in, and even after the rain started to pelt down, he encouraged his kids to keep going so they could see some sights below. So when it was all said and done, they learned that do not panic when things go wrong, and that we can find a way to fix most problems. There's a life lesson there. If you take a little risk, there will be rewards.
And with that, the notion that don't men usually want to fix things, that women want to talk about the emotions.
We men are notorious for trying to fix things,
right. So
whether it be a situation or otherwise.
So fathers need to role model the problem-solving piece, and then the mothers, or the soft feminine, tuning into the emotions. And you need both. You're needed. Mothers, fathers, you're needed, and mostly you're needed to have peace with each other, no matter what the dynamics are. If you're divorced and you're choosing to live apart, it's still important to understand that you hold the keys to your children's mental health, which means that you have to create a sense of respect. You have to create a sense of being on the same page in the best interest of the child, whatever that looks like, no matter what.
No matter what. And
No
remember,
matter what.
the most important thing of it all is unconditional love.
Mm-hmm.
So next week, we are going to have special sessions with a patient on air. So stay tuned to see a real life experience of how Dr. Judy and her mind map works in real time. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be just an amazing, amazing event. And if you want an idea for a show, or you want to share something with us, or we're going to shrink our tune now, we have a request for Shrink the Tune, you can write us at info, at drjudywtf.com. And you can pull us on Stitcher and iTunes, and, of course, here at UBN, Universal Broadcasting Network Radio.com as well. And I'm Walt Lusk, your host, and Dr. Judy Rosenberg is here as well. And we are here for you. So any issues or challenges, we'd love to address them either through emails or on or off the air. So just stay in tune and stay in touch. Our song is entitled Cats in the Cradle.
Anybody surprised?
And it was written by, of course, Harry Chapin. And he actually said that his wife kind of helped him write the song. And he was scared to death of the song because he was afraid that his son would emulate what the song was about, as he did, of course, with his father.
Okay.
So we're gonna read the song, this really hits home to me.
Okay.
And of course, we're gonna play the song. My child arrived just the other day. He came to the world in the usual way, but there are planes to catch and bills to pay. He learned to walk while I was away, and he was talking for I knew it. And as he grew, he said, "I'm gonna be like you, Dad. You know, I'm gonna be like you."
Well, this is such a bittersweet song, isn't it? Because
Yes, it is.
there's a pressure, of course, to pay the bills and be the man and travel and do whatever it takes to bring home the money, right? And then, on the other hand, wow, this baby learned to walk while he was away, and he missed out. And then he says, kind of like a foreboding, "I'm going to be like you, Dad. I'm going to be like you." And there's something kind of very, sad about.
Well,
I'm gonna be like
it's a
you.
compliment, but it's scary at the same time.
Right.
And the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon, little boy blue and the man on the moon. When you coming home, Dad? I don't know when, but we'll get together then. You know we'll have a good time then.
And this creates a sense of pining, doesn't it?
Oh,
when are you
yes.
coming home? I don't know. And you see the little child staring out and watching the cars go by, hoping that Daddy's coming home, and the immense tension in that child's body, just waiting.
Well, anticipation.
Yes.
And my son turned 10 just the other day. He said, "Thanks for the ball, Dad. Come on, let's play. Can you teach me to throw?" I said, "Not today. I got a lot to do," he said. "That's okay." And he walked away with a big smile that he never dimmed. And he said, "I'm going to be like him. Yeah, you know I'm going to be like him."
Well, on the one hand, a child wants to be like Dad because Dad's the hero, but then here's the bittersweet part, is that the blueprint is the child's just going to be like Dad, not having the time of day to play. And there's the blueprint set right there. So well said in the song.
When he came home from college just the other day, so much like a man, I just had to say, "Son, I'm proud of you. Can you sit for a while?" He shook his head and he said with a smile, What I'd really like, Dad, is to borrow the car keys. See you later. Can I have them, please?
Well, payback time, right? Here it is. Not that a young man doesn't want the car keys, but now he's been trained by his dad to not really give time and attention, and so there's not much of a relationship. So he'd rather have the car than the time with Dad, just like the dad would rather do what he needed to do than spend the time with his son.
Well, the roles are somewhat reversed, possibly.
Very much.
Dad's
This
retired.
is the reversal.
Yep. Dad's
Right.
retired, has got all the time in the world, and the son's got to get out. Got to
Right,
go.
and then as we get old, we regress. We become like children.
Yeah, we do. And the Cat's in the Cradle and the Silver Spoon, Little Boy Blue and the Man on the Moon. When you coming home, son? I don't know when, but we'll get together then, Dad. You know we'll have a good time then.
And then going back to the beginning, Dad, I'm going to be just like you. Well, there it is. He's just like
It's
him.
already happened. I've long since retired and my son's moved away. I called him up just the other day. I said, I'd like to see you if you don't mind. He said, I'd love to, Dad, if I could find the time. You see, my new job's a hassle and the kids have the flu, but it's sure nice talking to you, Dad. It's been sure nice talking to you.
Well, didn't Dad blow him off from day one?
Yeah.
And now isn't the son doing the same?
And as I hung up the phone, it occurred to me he'd grown up just like me. My boy was just like me. And then, of course, the chorus. That's Cats in the Cradle, written by Harry Chapin. It's a classic. We have been talking about fathers. We're probably going to be doing this again. And you've been listening to Dr. Judy WTF, and you can check us out on drjudywtf.com. And I'm Walt Lusk. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks for being a part of our show. And next week, stay tuned for an amazing journey on doing real therapy on air. God bless.
God bless.
A child arrived just the other day. He came to the world in the usual way, but there were planes to catch and bills to pay. He learned to walk while I was away, and he was talking for I knew it. And as he grew, he'd say, I'm gonna be like you, Dad. You know I'm gonna be like you. And the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon, little boy blue and the man on the moon. When you're coming home, Dad, I don't know when, but we'll get together then. You know we'll have a good time then. My son turned 10 just the other day. He said, thanks for the ball, Dad, come on, let's play. Can you teach me to throw? I said, not today, I got a lot to do. He said, that's okay, and he walked away, but his smile never dimmed. Said, I'm gonna be like him, yeah, you know I'm gonna be like him. And the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon, little boy blue and the man on the moon. When you're coming home, Dad, I don't know when, but we'll get together then. You know we'll have a good time then. Well, he came from college just the other day. So much like a man, I just had to say, son, I'm proud of you. Can you sit for a while? He shook his head and he said with a smile, what I'd really like, Dad, is to borrow the car keys. See you later, can I have them, please? And the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon, little boy blue and the man on the moon. When you're coming home, son, I don't know when, but we'll get together then, Dad. You know we'll have a good time then. I've long since retired, my son's moved away. I called him up just the other day. I said, I'd like to see you if you don't mind. He said, I'd love to, Dad, if I can find the time. You my new job's a hassle and the kids are the flu. But it's sure nice talking to you, Dad. It's been sure nice talking to you. And as I hung up the phone, it occurred to me he'd grown up just like me. My boy was just like me.